Hello and welcome. In this short video, I'm going to demonstrate on how to create a simple table in a database using an RDBMS, a relational database management system, a command prompt, and a source file or a text file. One of the most popular RDBMS systems available out there to download and to use is MySQL, or what is formerly known as a MySQL, currently called MariaDB. The reason for me that I chose this specific package is because when it's combined with a PHP scripting language, they can produce a very unique and a powerful web-based application. Of course, the PHP scripting language is going to manipulate all my records in my table, and that will be explained in another video. In a few seconds, I'm going to switch my camera over to my computer screen in order to demonstrate a few practical steps.
Okay, so here we're going to show you the few practical steps that we mentioned in our video earlier. Now, in order to download the XAMPP cross-platform web server, we need to go to apachefriends.org website and selecting the appropriate Windows version that suits our computer system, we can download and install the software and use it for free. Once that's done, then we can launch the control panel of the XAMPP service. And in that panel, we can see we have a variety of services, and the ones that I am concerned about in conducting this web-based application has to be the Apache and the MySQL. So I need to make sure that these two services are running by clicking on the Start button for the Apache server and then clicking on the Start button for the MySQL. Once the port numbers are being mentioned here, it indicates that the connection has been created and established. Sometimes, for some reason, if you are running an active antivirus, they can prevent the ports from finding the right connection, and therefore you need to disable or deactivate your antivirus. In other cases, if your machine is running a virtual machine, they do sometimes conflict with that port connection, and therefore you need to make sure that always the ports, they have these numbers. It could be a different numbers, it depends on your network settings, but they need to find a path for connection. Once this is done, then we can go ahead and proceed with the further steps in order to build our web-based application. And of course, as I mentioned before, that I need the MariaDB, which is previously known as MySQL, and a PHP scripting language. PHP, however, we're going to talk about that in another video to create a PHP file that is going to manipulate records in my table inside my database. And then we'll be able to show you the XAMPP directory files are saved inside the C drive of the computer system. And thus in the C drive here, if you click at it, then we can see XAMPP folder that contains everything and every file related to this cross-platform web server. So we have, for example, we have the htdocs, and that contains all the scripting languages that you can put here and all the functionalities that go into manipulate records in your databases. And you have another important folder, which is the MySQL, and you have the phpMyAdmin, which is the interface that's going to help you to design your database that contains your table in the future. One of the first methods of creating database is by using the command prompt, the CMD. So just by going to the search bar and typing CMD, as we can see that the command prompt app is popping up. Just by clicking on that, then we have our path, or where we are at the moment, under the C drive of this computer system. However, this needs to be changed into the right directory path, and in order to do that, we have to type the following: C column \XAMPP /MySQL /bin. Now you can type that, or you can just copy it. And I've always used to encourage my students to type rather than copying, because that's the only way where you can, of course, learn. Even if you make mistakes, that's not a problem, because we always learn from our mistakes. So even if you type and you mistype some codes or some commands, there will be no problem for that, because you can always repeat it and then eventually you learn. After typing this, or after copying this command, then I'm inside this directory, XAMPP MySQL bin. Then I need to access the RDBMS, the Relational Database Management System, which is MariaDB. And in order to do that, I need to write the default username and the password. The default username is root, and the default password is empty, so we don't need to worry about that. So we need to type the following: MySQL space hash or hyphen h localhost space hyphen u, that's for username, root. And as we said, the password is empty. So to do that, and copy it here, press enter, and here we are inside the MariaDB RDBMS. And as we can see, it says MariaDB and the word none, and none means there are no databases are being created yet. The next step is to create our first database. In order to do that, we have to type the command create database followed by the database name that you want to. And it's always recommended to make your database name relevant to your topic or to your project. But in my case, however, I'm going just to use a random name. So let's call our first database 1. And always, to execute your statement, you have to end the command line with a semicolon. And here we are. We have created our first database. How to know that? Because we haven't received any error messages right here. Had we made any mistake, it would have showed any error messages right here. And as we can see, there is no error. So to double check that we are in the right place, we can use the command use followed by the newly created database 1, and don't forget, always a semicolon at the end of a statement, and hit enter. And here we are. We can see that the MariaDB has changed from none to 1. So that means we are in the right place. We are now operating in the right database that's called 1. Okay, the next step is to create our first table. And to shorten the amount of time that I'm going to spend typing the code, I just already made the code ready for you, and I'm going to go through it. So the first line of the command is to create table, and there's a table name called AA. Then we are have an opening parenthesis here. Then we have our first column in this table, and the column will be named ID. So ID is the name of the column, and I have another column called name, and I have another column called email, and another column called address. And as you see, at the end of each column I have a comma. So this comma here, that means I am moving from the first column to the next one, and I always separate between the commands as columns. And remember, semicolon always at the end to execute the command, which is I'm not going to press enter yet until I finish explaining everything here. So the first column will be called ID, and it's going to be an integer type of data to be inserted in that column. And then I chosen not null, which means it's not going to accept any null value or no values, which means we cannot proceed, we cannot insert record or update any record unless we insert a value, a valid value in this column. Auto increment, it is automatically increasing the numbers that's been added, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then of course this column has been assigned to be a primary key in my table. Then we have the second column, which is called name, and the type of it is character, and it's char, and the size of it is 50. And again, it's being assigned as a not null. And we have the third column, which is email, and the type of it is char or character, and the size of it is 50. And finally, the last column is called address, is a type character or char, and the size of it is 100. Then of course a double parenthesis here to close it, then a semicolon by the end of the command to execute it. After I hit enter, I have again no error messages showing, which makes me feel comfortable, and I know that my work has been done. And to double check that, I can just write the other command that is called show tables, followed by a semicolon, and this command will be able to show me how many tables I have inside the database 1. Hit enter, and here we are. We have our first simple table that contains 4 columns here as being created inside our database 1. Okay, so the second method of creating a table in a database is to use a text editor. And in this case, I'm using the Notepad text editor that comes with Windows operating system. So by opening this program, you just need to type the following commands as we did previously in the command prompt line. We create database first, if not exist, called city. So in the previous example, I created a database called 1. Now I've changed that into another database called city, and then I'm making sure to use city, and always I use semicolon by the end of a statement to execute them. Then I am creating my table inside city, and in this case is going to be called London. And London table contains 3 columns. As we can see, there is a comma that separates between the columns here. The first column is going to be my street ID, and always ID, they carry an integer type because they're going to be numbers. And it's going to be auto increment and assigned as a primary key of my table. The second column is going to be street name and is a char type, 50, that's the size of it. And then the last column is street address and is char type as well, and the size is 50. Then we end it with a double parenthesis here and a semicolon to execute it. However, in this case, we're not going to the command prompt to execute it there. Instead, we're going to save it as an SQL file. So I'm going to call it as a.sql, and I will save it inside this directory path, which is XAMPP MySQL bin. Click at save, and here we are, save. This file now has been saved inside the bin of my SQL. However, it is not being compiled. I need to compile it first. So I need to go to the command prompt here, and I need to log out. As you can see, exit the MariaDB1 database, and log in back again to the system by using the default username and password. Here we are, we're inside, and then I can just type source space and then the file name, which is a.sql, and I end it with a semicolon to execute it. Hit enter, and here we are. We are inside. As you can see, MariaDB has changed into city now. I'm inside city. To double check that I have created the right table under the right database, I can type show tables, semicolon. Hit the enter button, and here we are, our new table created under our new database called city. Alright, and the last method of creating tables and databases is by using the phpMyAdmin interface, which is a feature available in XAMPP package. And to do that, we need to type localhost to get into the XAMPP dashboard area. And here we have the MariaDB RDBMS with the scripting languages that are compatible with it, such as PHP and Perl. Then we click at phpMyAdmin, and this will take us to this easy to use interface that does not require any command line writings. And if we look at the left hand side, we can see the database that we created earlier called 1. Here we need to click at databases first, and then we give a name to our database. Let's call it company and click at create. Then inside company, we need to give a name for our new table. Let's call it staff. And we have to decide how many columns we want to have in this new table. So let's say 2. Click go. Then here we can decide our work and we can give names for our columns. So our first column is going to be ID, and then it's going to be integer type, and I'm going to assign this as my primary key. And that's just a confirmation dialog box here asking me if I want to call my ID integer type column to be assigned as a primary key, and I'll choose go. Then my second column, I'm going to name it as full name, and the type of it is going to be varchar here, and I'm going to give like the size of this column. What's the size of the values that will be accepted? Then of course click at save, and here we have our new table called staff under our new database called company, and it contains 2 columns, ID and full name.
So that was a very short video on how to create simple table in a database using a variety of ways. I hope the video was beneficial, and thanks for watching.